What you see before you is hours of hard work. Not only did I fill out these wonderful little sheets here, but I actually did a review of almost all of these. The only ones that I have not reviewed yet are the Lyra and Neo, which I will do down the road. But regardless, you will get an idea of watercolor crayons or water-soluble crayons and who's the best at what category. So, how does this work? Now, like I said, I did reviews. Some of these I've used already in the past. I do have a video on like Neocolor versus Lyra. And then I also have a video on Neo versus Lyra versus Mungio, I think. Can't remember. But so I have some verses just on those alone. But I wanted to kind of go over the sheet with you. The sheet is only part of the review. Using the crayon, testing them on books, and then using them myself personally on top of that has gone into figuring out the following categories, which I will be putting on the screen. We are going to be talking about what is the best budget, what is the best for those who are doing this solely for adult coloring, what is the best for light fast, which ones would I recommend for artists who also do adult coloring, what is the best all around, you know, the big bad one, the biggest surprise, the best for create space, the best mid-range, so not necessarily budget, but also not I'm gonna break your bank account. The best for working off of the palette in order. So they all worked right on the palette, but I'm gonna go in order of which one I feel performs better. What I would use again, and the worst, or the one that I was just not impressed by and have zero desire to ever touch again. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to explain the sheet a little and how it plays a role, but again, the sheet is not the only thing. I have several categories. Some of these are updated, some you'll see like a little swatch down here, but this is an updated sheet. For Neocolor 2, basically I checked how they felt dry, how they felt, we could zoom you in, couldn't we? How they felt activated with a watercolor brush, and for consistency, they were all done with the number 8 round Princeton Aqua Elite, and then how they activated with a water brush, and again, for consistency, I just used this one I have from Prima Marketing. Not my favorite, but it was the one that was closest. Then we have a test for pencils on top, which I forgot to do on this one, but it's because I knew they would work anyways. Then we have one where I put it on a palette, activate it, take the color and use it more like a watercolor, and then also taking it off the tip. Then we have a lifting test. Now this may not really be important to adult colorists or even some artists, but just in case you're curious. Reactivation, I also test their transparency, but also how well they drag. We do some blending. I've got some pricing, papers I've tested them on, all that good stuff. Which reminds me, I gotta get some books here that have some swatches. So I did do and redo, so in my reviews, I had quickly done them on a coloring book. This is just a Maria Trollet book, but I redid them on this book as well as doing one on Create Space. I just grabbed a Coco Wyo book. So what's interesting is you'll see that a lot of the more artist grade ones actually sucked on here. So now we're talking straight pencil to paper and dissolving it on there. So I found that kind of funny. But what I plan to do is, so that you're not just staring at these, I'll kind of have like a list going as well. Now, like I said, if you want to see individual reviews, then we can do that, but there will be links in the description below to those reviews. First things first, let's start with a category of best for Create Space. I had a request. So Create Space paper is books printed by Amazon that are kind of like this cheap copy paper. Everything bleeds through. They're quite awful. I tested on this front cover page here all of the brands that were competing, and I felt that in this order, I felt these were the best for Create Space only. So the Crayola Signature did the best. It didn't pill the paper, it dissolved, it dragged, and it held its color. So I found that quite interesting. Second place was the Faber-Castell. Look how vibrant that is. And it actually dissolved quite well on here. Third was the Staedtler, which is interesting. Fourth was the Sargent Art up here. Fifth was the Neo. It dissolved, but it left a little bit of residue. So, well, it's down there. But you know what? It's an artist grade crayon. Stabilo did not dissolve very well, but Lyra did the worst. So, for Create Space, basically, if you want it to dissolve on the paper, you're going to want to go with Crayola, Faber-Castell, or Staedtler. So those were the winners for the best Create Space performance pencil. Okay, now what would be the best budget pencil? Did I say pencil? I meant crayons. The best budget and best performing budget. Now, I based this on a pencil that was just a little bit, crayon that was just a little bit over $1, so no more than $1.10 per piece and under. And the winner was the Crayola Signature. So the Crayola Signature, I found, performed the best in all of the categories I was testing, and they come out to 96 cents per crayon. Now you can only buy them in a 12 count set, and the 12 count set right now, at the time I'm filming this, is $11.49. I'll leave links to all the sets I've tested in the description below. However, second place is the Faber-Castell watercolor crayons. I felt these did pretty well considering they are a budget-ish one. That said, I'll be honest, I do feel they're a little bit more overpriced than they should be considering they're made for kids. But these came out to $1.07. So a 15 count package like this one here is $15.99. So that's why I put them in second place. They're just a little bit overpriced, but considering their performance, they actually performed really nicely for what you're paying. So I couldn't just like go, no. And then we have the Sargent Art. Now the Sargent Art are in here. They did okay performance-wise, but honestly the other two brands performed way better, including when you consider their price. However, this is the cheapest one. I believe it is the cheapest out of all of them. Yeah, it is. So these ones here you can get in a set of 36 or 24. I have a 36 count set here. That is $20.42. Now, the crayon range, depending on the set you buy, they go from 56 cents to 81 cents per crayon. So this is the cheapest, but when I'm talking, I don't want to just tell you, hey, this is the cheapest crayon, you should go for this one. I'm telling you what is the best out of the cheapest. This one is like half the price of the other two, but I would recommend these two first before this one, even though it's cheaper. So second place and first place by far. I mean, did this cost double the price of this? Yeah. But I would most definitely rather pay 50 cents something more to get a better crayon. Just my thought. So that covers the best budget category. Okay, so the best for artists who also do adult coloring would be Korilynn VanDyke and Lyra. Now, Korilynn VanDyke Neo Colors are going to be in first place. And that is simply because the Neocolor 2 cannot be beat, I guess. It performed beautifully in every single test. I mean, other than testing it on CreateSpace paper, but considering this is for an artist, you're not going to be using that. They are amazing off the palette. I mean, look at that color. They reactivate, they lift. They activate well with a brush or water brush. They blend beautifully. And to be quite honest, these are not that expensive. $1.72 to $2.06 a crayon. Just for a nice little comparison, the Stabilo Woody crayons, which I do not have in the artist category, cost $1.93 to $2.22 a crayon, and they don't even have the same quality. So, just something to keep in mind. All right, but next we have the Lyra. Now these Lyra Aquarelle crayons, they performed really well in pretty much all tests. Like I said, they did flop on CreateSpace paper, but hey, who are we to judge? An artist / adult colorist, you know, that may be a thing if you use CreateSpace paper, but look at the color coming off the palette for those. Whew. I mean, they just performed well in every single category. I didn't do the pencil on top of this one either, but here. I know you can draw on top of them. Blended beautifully, gorgeous drag. Now, these look better with a water brush than a watercolor brush in my opinion, but hey. Now these are $1.12 to $1.32 a crayon depending on the size, but the reason these are in second for artists is because while they are light fast, so you do get light fast here, you can't get them open stock. Neocolor is light fast and you can get it open stock. So that's why, unfortunately, in the artist category, these guys had to kind of drop down. Speaking of, why don't we just cover the light fast category since we're already here? So, the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2s definitely beat out any other brand in terms of light fast. They come with a very good rating on a lot of their crayons. Caran d'Ache tests. Caran d'Ache makes them for artists though, so you would kind of expect that. And considering how cheap these are per crayon, I mean, I'm getting a light fast crayon at possibly $1.72 a crayon if I buy like, you know, a big set here and open stock. So second would be the Lyra. So they're kind of a combined category, I guess we could say. Okay, so what would I recommend for those doing adult coloring? Now, there's a reason I have these suggestions in this way. I think quality does come at a price. And, you know, as you may be just starting out, but I already have a budget category if you're just starting out, so go that route. But if you're in adult coloring and maybe you eventually want to branch out into art, or basically you just want your supply to pay you back in the future, this is the list I have of what I would recommend for those who are in adult coloring and want to use these straight on their adult coloring books and get decent dissolvability, which is why I tested it on the Maria Trollet book. So let's start with third place. Believe it or not, Crayola. Yeah, I was kind of shocked myself. They want to use a water brush. These dissolve quite beautifully and they're very vibrant. If you use a normal watercolor brush, so hard to get those right, you will not get that performance. So that's something that you really need to keep in mind. You need this, not this. Otherwise, these look horrid. So this is what I would put in third for adult coloring because it's budget friendly, it dissolved well, works on the palette. You can mix them, make more colors. You've got 12 colors that you can do a ton with. Second place was the Lyra for the adult colorist. And first place was the Neocolor 2. I'm not going by budget here. I'm just saying what's the best performing in the book, performing in all aspects of dragging, blending, transparency, activation, pencils on top. How do they perform? The color payout you get when you're putting these down. Sorry, Neocolor won that one. So that is the best for adult colorists. Okay, now let's get on to the mid-range. Okay, so for mid-range, now these are ones that aren't going to cost you a fortune, but you know, you still are going to have to pay. And first was the Lyra. These are actually pretty affordable if you consider the fact that you're getting a light fast artist grade crayon, but it's not open stock. That said, you can get them in size of 48, 24, and 12, so hopefully the color you run out of is in there. But honestly, you can mix these on a palette as well. Now, Lyra's up in first as a mid-range. Again, $1.12 to $1.32 per crayon. And these are considered like the mid-range ones. So anything basically over $1 a crayon. So next we have the, what's next, right? I want to make sure I get it in the right order. Oh, the Crayola are in there. Now, these actually weren't over $1, but all my other ones that I had as an option, I honestly just didn't feel were worthy. So the Crayola to me would be the next best mid-range, as long as you're not going for an artist grade. We're talking adult coloring here. These are about 96 cents per crayon, but you only get the 12 count set. And then in third place was the Faber-Castell, which is $1.07 a crayon. And again, only come in 15 colors, but these are a good mid-range area. Like, I know it overlaps a little bit with the best budget kind of beginner, but I mean, I guess that's good, right? You buy a budget set that it's going to keep lasting you as you move on. So it's not really that bad. Okay, let's talk about the two sets that I was the least impressed with while using, testing, and just about everything. And those are these two here. The Neocolor, I've been saying it so much. The Sargent Art and the Staedtler honestly were the most disappointing things I have ever seen. So, for starters, neither of these are light fast. This does say finest pigments, but I don't know what pigments they're throwing in there. The colors were pretty meh. I just wasn't very impressed. Same thing when I did the palette and the tip test. Now, like say, let's right here. Here's Lyra, right? We're not even comparing to Neocolor. Look at how much came off the tip. You should get a ton of pigment off the tip of a watercolor pencil, watercolor crayon, anything like that, because you're taking directly from the source. Look at how bland these are. There's like nothing there. You're getting nothing. And then on the palette, they still weren't even that impressive, the color-wise. See here how vibrant that is? Also incredibly smooth. Now I will say, off the palette, the Sargent Art was smoother, but both of them also have quite a funky, chalky feel. Didn't even test that one, but it does work. Now, another reason I wasn't very impressed by either of these is they're scratchy, incredibly scratchy. They're scratching down the tooth of your paper, which means they're also not going to activate as well as they should. As you can see, they activated okay, but I mean, the Staedtler ones, the pigment was really disappointing. Like, really. I was like, what is this? Now, considering how much these cost per crayon, $1.08 to $1.43 a crayon out here in the US, maybe cheaper in the UK. These ones, I give them a little more leeway because it's $1.56 to $1.81 a crayon. So it's like, okay, that's all right. But what's funny is these didn't do too bad on the create space. You know, they were like in the middle of that range. But overall, would I buy these? Would I use these again? No. I actually don't recommend either of these. Now, this is a personal preference. You got to keep that in mind throughout this entire battle and all the results. Yeah, personal preference. So please do keep that in mind when I'm talking about these. But I will probably never use these again. I'll be giving these to my daughters because they've been asking for some watercolor crayons, and this is a great place to start. But palette, paper, off the tip, I just didn't feel these were worth the price because, well, I can go snag some Crayolas and apparently get a lot better colors. All right. So what was the best coming off of the palette? We will go in order, I suppose. All right, so coming off the palette, Neocolor 2 was the best to come off the palette. As you can see, the color is almost as vibrant as taking it directly from the tip, which was just flippin' impressive. So yeah, off the palette, it was great. It was very smooth. It was laying down similar to a watercolor, even though these are more of a water-soluble pastel. It spread beautifully, so I was incredibly impressed. In second place was, if I can get it, the Lyra. Same thing. It was pretty close to taking off the tip. Not quite, but I mean, look at that color. And it is very smooth. I was very impressed how smooth it came out. I used that same color down here straight on the paper, so you can kind of see the difference. Look how much better that looks. So off the palette, the Lyra did great. Off the palette, again, the Stabilo, which I know haven't been mentioned a ton in here, but, well, I don't know. Certain categories, they just don't shine. And there's a reason, which I will talk about. But off the palette, they were beautiful. And same thing with the tip. Look how close those are. Gorgeous color. It was very smooth. It's not chalky feeling. So I enjoyed that. And fourth place off the palette was the Crayola. Now off the tip, the pigment was pretty bad. But that kind of redeemed itself when you took it off the palette. It actually was very nice. And it's not chalky at all, which is crazy. Because usually like Crayola type paints are pretty chalky. Okay. So off the palette, again, we're just going off the palette. The Sargent art was pretty good. It was really smooth. So that was really impressive. Where it flopped was the color off the tip was like non-existent no matter what I did. Okay. And then next is Faber-Castell. Look at that. The tip and the palette are almost exactly the same, but great color coming off of that palette for sure. And then lastly was Staedtler, because the color just, yeah, just didn't do well, but it did okay. All of them do great on the palette, you know, because you're putting on a palette and you're mixing it into a watercolor, but the color wasn't as awesome as some of the other brands, so that's why they're last. So, what pencils, wow, it's a hard day to just drop that word. What crayons would I continue to use? And out of all of these ones I've tested, what's going to stay in my collection versus what is going to be given away or put in a stash, you know, for the kids? Let's see. Yes, the Neocolor is the set I will probably never get rid of and will always use because, like I said, in every single testing aspect, they just, yeah, knocked everything out of the water. They reactivate, they lift, they do beautifully with a brush and a water brush. The pricing is honestly not that bad. Open stock. So if I don't want to, you know, buy this whole set or I want to buy a few colors to play with them, I can go buy them open stock. They blend beautifully. The price ranges are really not that bad. The only thing is, if you go buy that 10 count set, you're paying $2 a crayon. So, you know, obviously the bigger the set, the less you pay. I think the color range in the 30 set is not too shabby. So if you're looking for something kind of without breaking the bank, you spend $47 on that set and you get a good range of colors. You can mix these and, you know, make them on the palette, but I will definitely use Neo again. And then, of course, we have the Lyra. I'm going to use the Lyra again. I actually use these often as it is already. And no, that's not me being biased because I've used them before. I just found that they performed exactly how I expected them to in the testing. Again, every category they did fine. And off the tip, they were the best ones to pull off the tip. They actually beat Neocolor. So, but I mean, the blending is beautiful. They reactivate, they lift, gorgeous. I like them. And they're cheap. They're pretty cheap. I mean, you can go get the 48 count set for $53 and some change. I have the 48 count set, but you can also get the 24 count set and the 12 count set. But the price per crayon is $1.12 to $1.32. It's just they don't have open stock, and that's the one bummer with those ones. Okay, the crayon that we didn't talk about a ton, but that's just because it kind of fell short in a lot of categories, is the Stabilo. I will still use these again. They did not initially test well on the sheet, but that was because it turned out they need a water brush. So these bad boys do not do well with a watercolor brush. They need a water brush. That said, off the tip and the palette, they are beautiful. They do blend well. I've used them multiple times myself. The only thing is they're incredibly overpriced, like outrageously overpriced. So when I run out of these, would I buy them again? No. So that's a big disclaimer to put there because we're talking the cheapest is $1.93, the highest $2.22 a crayon. And these are a lot of wood, whereas everything else is wax that you can use. Now, got to keep in mind, these are called 3-in-1s. You know, they're supposed to be a colored pencil, a watercolor pencil, and a wax crayon in one. So these will also reappear in the watercolor pencil battle. So keep that in mind because these may do better there than they did in the crayon battle. Because like I said, the shavings aren't usable with these. And then lastly, this one is honestly going to surprise me. Crayola. I would and will use these again. They did fine in the adult coloring book test. In fact, let me show you here. This is the Crayola signature right there. Beautifully, beautifully done. It dissolved just like the Neo. See, the Stabilo did fine there. And the Faber-Castell both did great. The Staedtler, well, and Sargent did exactly what I expected them to do. So, but I would use these again. So, that one kind of surprised myself. All right. So I know I've thrown a ton of categories at you. I've tried to keep the text on the screen so that it makes sense. But what's the order overall that I would put these in going through everything, right? Let's show you. Okay, if we were to go in absolute order from best to worst, just all around, it would be Neocolor 2 is number 1. The Lyra Aquarelle crayons, definitely second place. Crayola signature, third place. Isn't that nuts? I mean, it's Crayola. But hey, in their watercolor crayons, they did darn good. Watercolor pencils, I don't know. Now, the Faber-Castell ones are in fourth, and these are marketed for children. So that just kind of goes to show that you don't necessarily need to go spend a ton of money. Stabilo crayons are in 5th place because I just didn't feel they performed as great as they could in the watercolor crayon category. But like I said, I still plan to use them. And then second to last place is the Sargent Arts. They had some potential here and there, but honestly, the makeup of the crayon is what really makes them just kind of flop. Sorry, Sargent. But at least you're not in last place, because last place is Staedtler. Staedtler is by far the worst one out of the bunch. I honestly don't know why Staedtler put their name on these. Like, there was so many things wrong with these watercolor crayons. From them being scratchy to their awful blending. They don't reactivate, so it's like, okay, is this even watercolor? But hey, they did better than the other brands on CreateSpace, so I don't know, it's hit or miss. But that is the final list. And I would like to note, if I didn't have to pay royalty rights, I would have totally had that like song from one of the Rocky movies just playing, because all of those were like going through my head as I was doing this. Just fun fact. But yeah, that is the watercolor crayon battle. Hopefully I covered all the categories you guys wanted. The watercolor pencil battle will be coming shortly. I am trying to break things up and find a way to present that, because as you can see, this was 30 minutes for what, like just 6 brands? I don't know. So I may break it into parts. What is the best budget, and do budget only? What is the best for this paper? So I think that's how we're gonna have to work the watercolor pencil. See, now I'm swapping them around. The pencil battle. But thank you for watching the watercolor crayon battle. Please don't give me a thumbs down for that. It's just a goof, and you know what? I don't feel like editing. So, thanks for hanging out. I would love to know if you own any of these brands, what your thoughts were, if anything surprised you. You know, like I said, the biggest surprise for me was the Crayola, because when I reviewed them, I was kind of like, But then when I did more testing, they actually turned out not too shabby. So that was kind of interesting. So that just goes to show that, like, you can't just go off the sheet. You've got to do other tests and then bring it all together before you say, yeah, that one's better. We knew Neocolor was going to win. Did we honestly think anything else was going to? Lyra maybe had a chance, but not quite. Neocolor 2 just, yeah. Sorry, Crayon Dash gets it every time, most of the time. But thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, take care. Bye now.